Hey guys, welcome to LOL starring Chris Smith, the best comedy show on Love to Be Radio. Why is that? It's because it's the only comedy show on Love to Be Radio. Guys, welcome back to Sunday. And guys, I have another special guest for you. Well, special in numerous ways. He is the award-winning writer, producer, director, creator, war veteran, hero of everything, of the hit podcast show, the audio theatre for the mind, that is We're Alive, and that is the man himself, Mr. KC Wayland. Mr. Wayland, nice to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
I mean, damn, of all the guests I've had, and I've had quite a few, none of them have had as big of a franchise as they have of yours. I mean, how many shows are you working on right now?
I think I'm only down to two at the moment, but there's always something in development down the line that,
I mean, 'cause it was up to about 4 or 5 at the time, wasn't it?
there was a time there was about four or five going on at the same time this summer. I finished off one with Audible with Brendan Fraser called The Downloaded 2. And there's another one that will be releasing early next year that I can't talk about just yet, but on top of doing all the We're Alive stuff.
Yeah. Well, in case anyone who doesn't know, which is a bit of a surprise when we listen to this, KC Wayland is the creator of the hit podcast show We're Alive, A Story of Survival. One of pretty much the first zombie podcast to ever come out at the height of its power. That started in 2009-ish and has lasted more than 15 years, which is longer than most other podcasts do, which is quite a big surprise, especially fiction. All about literally the story of survival of some soldiers and survivors in an infected world. So I guess let's just kick off here and just ask, how did We're Alive start?
So yeah, We're Alive actually came out of the want of trying to do like long form storytelling for me, because I always had this sort of zombie survival plan. And when I got deployed overseas, I sort of saw a opportunity for like the ultimate survival like guide, because they had over there in Baghdad, they had a hotel, and what they did was they secured the hotel and they put all the soldiers inside of it, because you can secure the ground floor, and then it's all the floors above that would be secure. So I'm like, oh, this would be like the perfect scenario for a zombie survival show. Is you could do the same location. It's an apartment building. It's very filmable. So I wanted to make this TV show about it. And coincidentally, the tower in Iraq actually got attacked as well. Some of the things that actually happened in the We're Alive story are somewhat parallel from real life. So I was like, okay, well, how do I make this long form? If I pitch it to TV production companies that we make this, it would be very, it's difficult to make a TV show. And for me, I actually just got off of doing a whole bunch of animation and recording voices. And so I'm like, great, this would be really fun if we just did the audio portion of it and not have to focus on any of the visuals, and then really eventually be able to jump from audio drama to television. And hopefully one day we'll sort of do that. But that was kind of where it all started.
I mean, just for anyone who doesn't really understand a little bit there, studied at Chapman University in terms of media arts and things, but then also you were deployed, you enlisted and have served in Iraq. Is that right, sir?
Yeah, so I was in the Army. I was a broadcast engineer for the Army, and basically all the technical things that you have to do with like visual communications, audio communications, help set up Freedom Radio in Iraq, which is like the radio broadcast centers, like Good Morning Vietnam-ish. But then we also did a whole bunch of electronic news gathering, which means I got tossed around the country doing a lot of video broadcasts from various locations, or supporting video teams in the field. And there weren't many, and there actually aren't very many engineers like this for video in the Army or the military anymore. They've actually all contracted out. But I was sort of like one of those last dying breed in there.
Well, the last few. So how much of what would you say you took from your enlistment to We're Alive? How much of it was comparison? I mean, obviously the fact that you made the main characters soldiers, how much of your experience was detailed into the show?
I would say a lot because one of the things that I like to do is I like to put myself in pretty much all the characters and just my time in the military, being a reserve soldier, having to be active duty, play that life of citizen soldier was something that I really wanted the characters to have to experience at the same time. Because everyone, like I've heard so many times where people were like, "Oh my gosh, if a zombie breakout, did actually happen, quote unquote zombie, I say." The army and the military would just they'd be really hard charged. They get in there super fast, and my reality was like, no, no, they are the slowest moving beast. If something happened and it happened within a day, you see the response. No, no, it wouldn't happen. Actually, we've kind of proven that happening with some of the stuff happening later on in COVID-19. But yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, it was something where I was like, let's try and take as much of the experiences, like just the camaraderie of the soldiers, the day to day sometimes, and find a way to adapt it into some of the different character situations and things they go through throughout the entire series. There's like little bits that come up along the way when like Michael getting pulled back into being a soldier again, and just so much of the core was sort of my experiences just kind of spread out over the entire story.
Mm. I mean, one thing I always think that unites men of all tales is that every guy I think out there has a zombie survival plan. You
They
know,
should, yes, that's
yeah,
very true.
yeah.
Well,
I
what's
mean, it's just
yours?
well, I mean, that's always the thing where it's just like the location is always the big one because
Hmm.
just you think like, okay, where do I go? Like, do I? I mean, because I think every guy's for it. I mean, when I was in university, every single person was like, okay, what do we block the door with? Do we block it with the fridge? Do we block it with the sofa? What do we get for weapons? That sort of thing. But that highlights to you then. Does everyone then think that you're just the perfect survivalist because you've spent literally the last 15 years thinking about zombies?
Not really. I mean, that's the thing is depending on the situation you're in. Like with ours, the infected they're strong, they're fast, they can do all these things. They're incredibly intelligent. They have heightened smell, so it's like the survival scenarios for those are much more difficult. But it really depends on sort of what you're going up against. If you are going up against, the literal dead versus something that is alive and breathing and so I think it's all depending on sort of the situation you're in. But then again, you also have to factor in the biggest asterisk, which is the other human survivors. And that's something that I think
Yeah,
that's where a lot of the drama gets to come in, is how do the other people react and how do you have to be able to work with them or against them in these situations because there's an old saying that people are only three missed meals from complete chaos.
that's actually a good idea in terms of yeah. I mean that makes sense a lot. I mean to me one of my sayings I was always told that the best zombie survival plan always fails because it's
Yeah.
never been field tested. That's the deal. But I mean, thinking about it, like the timing of when you set up We're Alive, which was 2009, which was at pretty much the height, or is near the height of when zombie films and TV shows were a thing. I mean, this was a time when like Dawn of the Dead, 20 Days Later, yeah, and all these things came up. And for anyone who doesn't know their timing, you came out, I think, 1 year just shy of The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
which I imagine
Yeah.
you've been asked quite a few number of times in comparison about that damn show.
Well, that's the funny thing is like I saw the vacuum in television that I was like, nobody's doing a serialized survival zombie show. I was like, great. I have a great concept, a great way of like building this up. Are infected or are not like other ones. They're more human and there's a lot of different rules and the intelligence and everything and the fact that there was a leader. And yes, Walking Dead ended up cutting out like about a year later after that, and then kind of spoiled a lot of chances of us getting an adaptation at the time. I mean, there were previous zombie films and stuff, but after that, it really Walking Dead kind of took over, and everyone does say, "Oh, how are you different?" And there's a lot of difference in us. We are
Oh yeah, but
not
I
as
mean,
dark and grim.
well, I mean, it's safe to say watching both, or the knowing both shows now, I would have preferred yours as a TV show, especially by the fact of like the Walking Dead. I think had a problem which was putting too many characters together. There were
Mm.
a lot of people I had to sort of really care about. Whereas yours, it's a nice nitty group. You know,
Yeah.
there aren't that many.
And it's our. I have to be honest. I actually haven't seen Walking Dead because I've actually avoided it just to because I didn't want to copy anything inadvertently, and so eventually I will potentially see it. But no, I never did see it. But I have been told that ours is not as pessimistic. We actually have a little bit more hope in the people that are there, and it's strength between each others and the connections of the characters that really makes them the ultimate survivors.
That is actually true as comparison to both. But I mean, that's quite lovely because I imagine everyone assumes that you must have watched The Walking Dead instead of people thinking, oh, it's a series about zombies. But what inspirations, if there any, did you take from other zombie films or things? Was there a direct inspiration?
I think in some ways, I think because I really did cut myself off from a lot of zombie media after that because I didn't watch anything that there are a couple exceptions to the rule. Like I did see Zombieland, which is funny because literally in one of my episodes, one of the characters does refer to Zombieland as quote unquote as a line in the story, and I was like, oh, cool. There's actually something there.
Mm.
But I did get some inspiration from some of the originals. I did like Zack Snyder's version of Dawn of the Dead. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
liked. I also like Shaun of the Dead. So
Oh, yeah, classic.
I loved a lot of these different scenarios where you get to see the comedy of Shaun of the Dead was something that I thought was really, really great. That I felt like you could mix that a little bit in there. And we still try to do it every so often. It's more and more difficult when you have, grim topics like this. But a lot of that, and then also, I really wanted to do a good like character piece, kind of like Lost, where everybody has a very distinct background. They all come from different sources, and you really have because in audio, you really want to have that the diversity of the characters and really different ethnic backgrounds to get different accents, and so you have like Riley and Bert and just get the diversity of characters. So it's sort of like a conglomeration of all these different ideas on top of my ideal zombie scenario.
I mean, that's the thing to point out as well is that not only did you make it all audio, you made it basically you made a podcast basically around the time when the podcasts weren't exactly like the most popular form. Not to mention a fiction podcast. I mean, they're popular now, but it's like in 2009, they were still like a not a new thing, but it's like a growing form to be like, oh, this is something to be appreciated. I mean, even you call it an audio theater for the mind to just not associate yourself as a podcast. I mean, what were
Yeah,
the
because
early
everyone
days?
hears podcasts, they're like, "Oh, you're talking on it's a talk show," and it's like, no, we've been fighting that for a while. But yeah,
Yeah, that's what
there
I
was like
thought.
nothing out there. It
No,
was in 2009. There was like maybe a handful, and even podcasts alone were incredibly difficult to listen to. Nowadays, you can just pop it on your phone and stream live, but back then you had to have an iPod, you had to sync it,
yeah,
or a Zune if you had a
you
microphone
had to have
like
an actual
Zune.
device to listen to the show. So like, what were those early days like in terms of not just making it but promoting it, showing people this is what this is?
It was the Wild West. Like we had to figure out what like RSS feeds were, how we could actually get like we could find a way to have an embedded app inside of our website that would let it stream. We created like a forum, which forums don't really exist anymore since social media took over. And even social media wasn't filtered like it is today, where it's like aggregates and all that. It's like you post it, people saw it. So every single time we did something, it continually changed as we went. Like Apple Podcasts end up making their own fiction category, which is a completely new thing that ended up happening. It's just been crazy. And then now there are so many other fiction podcasts out there that even we who have a pretty big fan base, we still have to get out there in new ways, find ways to promote, show the show, get new listeners involved because audiences change over time. You lose some listeners, you gain some listeners, and it's continually changing every single day.
I mean, what has been so far the easiest transition to be like after all these years to be like, okay, at least I don't have to do this now as it was back then.
I think the identification of what a fiction podcast is and like telling people you don't do an audio drama is like we're still getting over that hurdle of a little bit from some people. But for the most part, if I tell someone, hey, you can download us on the podcast app, it's like, oh, cool, I can just get on my phone and hit it. Whereas before it was a lot more inaccessible. or getting us on Audible, another way that you can download the seasons without the commercials and such. So the accessibility, I think, has been a really big thing that's made it so much easier for someone to just jump in and listen. That when we first started, that was tough. We had CDs, and we don't even have no one has a CD player anymore.
God,
That's
yeah.
that's how long we've been going.
No, well, you've stood the test of time, but it's also safe to say that We're Alive was not the first thing that you made that sort of gained you fame. What you did first was your documentary, yeah,
Mhm.
365 Boots on the Ground. So tell us all about that and making that.
So that I've always been a storyteller. Whenever I was a kid, I started out doing a lot of like stop motion animation as a kid, doing Legos, doing action figures, and then I did short films with my friends on the weekends and did little horror films. And I was going into film school, and I had done my first semester there, and I got to the point where it was really difficult to afford going to college. I had to figure out a new plan, a new strategy. And so that's sort of what started me going into the military, to kind of start that journey. And then I went back to college, continued to get my degree in film, and then I got deployed to go overseas. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to take a break from learning how to be a filmmaker, learning how to do storytelling in this way. And I was like, well, what if I take my experience and combine it with my storytelling ability and film the journey of what it's like to be a soldier, just a regular everyday soldier, to go from home to overseas to all the way to back, and what that would be like. And so that's sort of what inspired me to do that. Keep being creative. It also is like kind of like the journals in the original series where they're like,
Mm.
using it as a way to decompress and put themselves away from the situation. That was sort of me in a way. I was using the camera to record what I was doing, but also like give myself some sort of creative outlet throughout that entire process, and then got home, put it together, and put it out there.
No, I love it because this is sort of a little bit like a home movie in a way, just like day to day life as a soldier. When filming it or making it or just putting it all together, was there anything in the back of your mind thinking like, don't make this look like any war movie, don't make this look like like jarheads, or don't make it look like something that people think what the military is. This is how I want it to be seen.
Yeah, that was the idea of it, is just give the everyday life. Give, because so many people, especially when they look at soldiers, and this is something that I've seen a lot in fiction, and that I want to do differently, is they see them as cardboard cutouts of people that just follow orders, that don't actually have like depth or background, and yes sir, no sirs, and it's an entirely different life, and every single person that goes through it has a different background. They have a different reason for being there. So I just wanted to show what it was like just to be a normal person in that situation, and what it was like to have to experience all of that. And yeah, to do it, I actually built a camera in my helmet. There was no GoPro at the time, so I had to design a little unit that went to a little camera pack to record, and just to try and get the monotony of what it was like to just be that normal person inside that crazy situation.
I mean, it paid off because it earned you numerous awards, including Best Documentary at Chatham University in 2005, and at the Big Bear Film Festival, it won you the best student documentary. How was that feeling of like something you put out there thinking, oh, I want to show this, but then it winning? So how was that feeling?
It's great. I mean, that the doing the documentary and get any art form, and really you get out there and then people enjoy it and you win awards from it, it's like somebody can recognizes the work that you put in it. And just the other part of it too is like you get to see how it affects other people as well. Like seeing other soldiers or other people who can see that and say, this is great. I love the fact that you're putting out stories of just what it really was like, versus when I'm trying to tell somebody what it was like to be deployed. This helps them bridge that gap and communicate in a way that maybe they weren't able to.
Mm.
So I find that that's one of the biggest rewarding things of it. I mean, getting acclaim, really, the acclaim thing in awards helps for your next project.
Yeah,
But the impact is the thing that kind of resonates and lasts a bit forever.
I mean, did that help build at least a bit of reputation for making We're Alive? To be like, oh hey, I've technically done stuff.
A little bit. I mean, that's the thing, is there's whenever you're going from one medium to the next, there is a little bit of like a little hesitation of like, can you do this other thing? So that's where it's like, you go from documentary to either animation to if you go to television or movies or such, it's even audio drama. Everyone, like, you have to kind of prove yourself within that medium to make sure that it works. Even though it's like all storytelling at the end of the day, but you have to kind of show somebody that like this can work in this medium. And that's one of the things about like when we were trying to get We're Alive to go to other mediums, you have to sort of prove why it would work in this way versus something that's already been established or done previously.
Well, I mean, that's the thing to dive into a little bit more in the sense that, yes, most of your background was in like filming, video, and animation, like a lot of visual stuff. And even with Royal Live, you tried to do it. Then when you moved into audio, what was the difficulty in sort of, well, I mean, I imagine because you had plans of like, okay, this is what I want to see of it. What was the biggest difficulty moving from one medium to the other to moving from visual to audio?
Well, the biggest thing is, and I sort of say this all the time, is confusion is the killer of audio dramas. If the listener, if somebody that's trying to track what you're doing inside of this gets confused and doesn't know what's happening, you're failing. And that's the big thing that is a hurdle for all audio dramas is like, how do I use all the assets that I have inside of audio to communicate something to the listener? And that was something that was inherently difficult. When I was doing some of my visual stuff, I ended up kind of getting a love for audio. I did like 16 millimeter films that you didn't record any audio on set because it was film. We didn't have any sound recorders. We just filmed on 16 millimeter and then create the sounds later. And one of the things that I really loved about that is because you can really create something from nothing. And that's the cool part about it is when you're able to create all these worlds in audio and find ways of communicating with the listener in a new way through audio, then it does become easier. But the writing, everything had to sort of change in order to be like, how do I tell them or show them through audio in a way that maybe is not as easy as before? And then sort of the entire gamut of me doing this has been learning what works, what doesn't work. Let's try
Yeah.
something new. Let's try a different way of doing this, some new transition or something that hasn't been done before.
Well, I imagine that's the thing, because especially making a fiction audio show is tough, because, like you say, you do have to sort of have some exposition. You have to explain things, but then making so involving apocalypse, especially zombies, or infected for you, which is a lot of visual stuff. It's a lot of things where it's like the person has to at least see it or know of it. How do you balance the meaning of like of the audience having to know certain things without seeming like a lore dump?
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of also the cool thing about it is with zombies especially is I can do a whole bunch of the zombies and we don't have to have a whole bunch of different actors come in to do those. So you can be like and like do it yourself.
Yeah.
But in terms of just being able to like have the audience like track what you're doing and being able to understand what's happening, it can be troublesome. It's not the easiest thing. There is some things that you have to do differently in order to be able to make sure that they understand. And it's also cool because with zombies, the audience becomes the participant. They're seeing in their head the scariest thing that they can imagine. They're the ones who are actually that active participant. So you kind of balance like I almost don't want to give them too much and I don't want to give them too little. And it's same with the characters too. Like I'll give you a voice, but I might not give you an absolutely crazy full description of them because I want you to imagine what you're seeing rather than me just feeding it to you. It's almost like you have books which you have to imagine everything, and then you have like movies which you get everything. We're like in between, where
Mm.
it's the audience becomes that active participant between the two, and you get to be part of the storytelling process as well.
Well, yeah, because I do love that, but also in the sense that the shows change over time. In the sense that with We're Alive, the first one, you
Hmm.
sort of give yourself an out by doing the journals. Since like,
Yeah.
oh, this is how I do the exposition. I make everyone write things
Yep.
to explain this to early point. But then in later shows and episodes, you sort of drop that. Like, was that
Yeah.
just a choice, or was that just of the times to be like, oh, I'm not doing journals again? That's just so old.
Well, basically it's a mix of both because the journals, the one thing I loved about the journals is you get into the heads of the character. You get to get behind the scenes in their mind of how they're interpreting things. You get a lot of the exposition that you aren't able to do. But the journals also did a couple things. They inhibited your perspective a little bit. You had to have somebody write a journal in order to experience what they're writing, and it locked your perspective. You couldn't jump into the seat of someone else who isn't part of that journal to be able to experience what they're doing or have some sort of witness that conveys it that somebody wrote down. So it really inhibited the perspective of what we were able to do. Because now, when we get to Descendants, there was no journals at all. So where I'm able to jump into the perspectives that we don't have, able to jump into the enemy's camp, so to speak, and able to do a little bit more diverse perspectives rather than what was being locked before. Also, journals for an action sequence, jumping from an action sequence to a journal stalls the momentum. It like pulls everything back versus like when you're actually doing like a sequence with action, you can just flow through it without having to like stall for exposition.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the sense in a second. The sense that right now, in terms of the whole franchise, there are at least 5 shows which everyone should listen to. Which is the first, We're Alive, then Lockdown, Gold Rush, Scout Sonnet, and now Descendants, which is going on its second season. Am I right?
Yes. So to be honest, they're all basically the same story. It's
Mm.
just so we treat Descendants the second season as like season 9 of We're Alive because they
Yeah.
all actually add up into each other in the end.
But I guess one thing I do sort of have difficulty, well, not difficulty, but the thing I always find trouble with a lot of zombie stuff out there is that once the initial, like, first half of it is, oh, zombies are out there, it's time to attack, that's the initial shock of it. The rest of it does just become a story of humans, like a group of survivors handling each other, which can
Hmm.
be difficult depicting in terms of what type of people you want in the show. Like, did you have a certain mindset of like, okay, I want this type of person, this type of person, this type of person to be in my group of survivors?
Yeah, initially I made a board of them and was like, okay, what kind of people do I want to have in here? And part of them were like influenced from my military time. Like I was like, okay, the Saul was sort of like an archetype of a couple people that I had met. Angel was like the archetype of like the officers that I had met who didn't have as much experience, but also there's a deeper background to Angel that we sort of hid off to the side. Bert was, a bit of the gunnery sergeant marine. I knew a whole bunch of people that were like that. Also, there's a lot of inspiration from my dad inside of Bert. Like even his tuna sandwich story was my actual
Yeah.
dad's story.
Oh, really?
And yeah, that was his. So that's a real story about like when the RPG came in, and when he was in Vietnam, and because he was going for a tuna sandwich, the RPG hit where he was at after he had just left. So it was like one of his close calls, and I remember the story, and so I put it in this there in ours to sort of
That's a nice little
immortalize it.
tribute there.
But yeah, so like Riley, I wanted to get like a very different, diverse background character for her. And Pegs, I wanted to include somebody who isn't the typical survival person that you might think, but ultimately is the greatest balance of the characters, and try to get as many real types of people as possible, from Kelly, Victor, just to try and get as many different perspectives of storytelling that you have, because everyone's gonna be at odds. I mean, anybody's gonna argue in those situations, and I think the more that you get from like real life backgrounds and get that diversity of cast, the more you have to work with later on, and the more you get to play with the dynamics of the characters. But you also have to make them somewhat likable at the same time.
I know. Just in terms of the actors, because I know they're playing a part, but with any of them at the time when they were doing the roles, and it was thinking this when they were like going through the plans of like what their characters do, were any actors been like, that's not what I would have done in the zombie apocalypse. I would have done this.
I think there's a fair amount of that. Especially Kelly, Tammy Klein, who plays Kelly. She actually has like an Air Force background, so she has a
Oh,
very
really?
different background from the characters. The where I had that character go. Also, Kelly is one of the sweetest, or excuse me, Tammy's one of the sweetest persons. Kelly was not in the story, so that was
No,
really really counter to that character there. So I think yeah, I think there's a couple that would definitely have that. I think Peg's the real person in real life would not have been as pacifist as them. Lizzie actually, what's funny about Lizzie is Lizzie's actually played by my now wife. She was my girlfriend back then.
yeah.
And there's a lot of parallels with her that parallel real life. But some of more Peg's qualities are actually more my wife's qualities. So
Mm.
yeah.
I mean that's hilarious. That's just me thinking like, oh yeah, so much background to all these characters. But so just to give everyone out there, there will be spoilers in this whole thing. But there is 15 years worth of stuff to listen to. So go back to
Oh
listen
yeah.
to the whole thing. But we're basically on the idea that the most recent episode came out 2 weeks ago. So we're just going to go
Hmm.
up from there. But we're not going to get there yet. We're just going to talk about other shows first. So the main show ended. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
alive. The main show ended, and then
The story of survival is what we say. The
yeah,
first four seasons. Yeah.
that's great. The story of survival ended, and then how much was there a transition into lockdown? Did you have any idea that was going to happen, or were you just off the bat? No, this is what's going to happen next.
Well, the funny thing is, like, when We're Alive, the story of survival ended, I was on stage and I plugged what I called Tales of We're Alive, which was the next iterations of stories. And Lockdown was the very first one. That was the one because I love the idea and concept of it where you get to see society break down in a micro environment, like where they are entirely safe but the world has ended around them. And when do you have the guise of society fall? Like, when do you stop becoming that prison guard and start to become a human being again? And that was like the one of the main things I wanted to portray in that story of like, at the end of the day, we're all still people. And that was, to me, that was the story I wanted to tell next. So that was a huge one for me. And also plant little seeds for some of the bigger things that we're doing later on because it's sort of a little bit of a reveal is Lockdown is sort of a background for one of the main characters of Descendants, Vera. And
Yes,
then Gold Rush is sort of the background for Alex. Story of
yeah,
Survival is the background for Nick. And then Scout's Honor is a background for some things that I can't really explain just yet, but it's more of it's
uh,
probably the most standalone of all the stories. Just because I love the idea of showing this perspective of kids having to do this and going and coming of age within this environment.
no, I do still love it in podcasts because you've done this as well, where like podcasts say, "Oh yes, you can listen to this one. You don't have to listen to the others." But even though I know, it's like, yeah, I'm going to have to listen to the other ones because I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff in here which is just in there. But I mean, the lockdown sort of did highlight something which it happens in all the shows, but like the idea of in lockdown, the zombie apocalypse happens in the one place which is the most secure,
Hmm.
which is now a place where sort of the worst people you want to be around with are now here, and you have to sort of find the middle ground of like, okay, how much can I trust you? How much can I
Hmm.
rely on these people? Which happens along all the shows, including Descendants, which is how to balance the media of like how much of a character can be likable or redeemable. I
Yeah.
mean, because even in Descendants, there are certain characters which you think, how much can I redeem them? Is that tough to sort of write out? Because there are certain characters out there where you're just like, do I want to kill them off or not?
Well, that's the thing that I love doing is that no one person is inherently just 100% evil. They have their own perspectives and reasons for the things that they do. Some people are a product of the environments that they become in, or it's projected on them from other people. So I always try and find like a background or a reason why they are the way they are, and that's what you get to deal with, like the depth of it. Like there's a character, I'll try and retain some spoiler issues, where we've had characters who are bad guys, but they are bad guys for a certain reason, and they're quote unquote bad because maybe they got stuck in a situation. This In the survival world, people have to make choices that are not always good because they are trying to survive or they're trying to help other people survive. And that is a decision that ultimately we as listeners can sometimes very easily project and judge people. But until you've had to walk in their shoes, you don't really know what they've had to go through. And I love playing that line.
Mm. No, but I love that because I think that's the thing I sort of like in any apocalypse story, but in a zombie apocalypse, no matter what it is, the line I've learned is there is no such thing as a good guy anymore. And
Hmm.
that everyone has had to do something to be cruel and so. And like you're right, the people can be put in situations where it's just you're not going to be the good guy in this situation, but you're not the
Yeah.
bad guy either. But I mean,
Yeah, there's no such thing as pure there. Actually, I would take that back. There probably is, I think, one or two characters, mostly one that I can think of. I don't want to reveal it too much. That is pure evil. But other than that, I think there's everyone has a reason. Even Scratch had sort of reasons why they became the way they became, and did become evil in the end, but they didn't start that way.
yeah, no, I'll give you that. I mean, because I mean, Scratch was sort of your big bad in the first
Oh yeah.
in Story Survival, where it was a little bit like, okay, get into that, and going into spoilers a little bit. When did the idea was the idea of the family a starting thing, or was that something that just came along later?
That kind of came about a bit within season one, as I was trying to give some more depth to the Angel character.
Yeah,
I had some
in my mind, you
ideas.
did Angel dirty there. You did him a dirty.
Fair, fair. And the in our world, the it did do with something where nobody is safe. Where, it's like no matter if you're a main character or not, nobody is truly can last forever. Can I give you a little spoiler that's going to come up in a future episode? Is that allowed?
Well, please, I mean, it's your show.
It's
Please.
it's it's one line where no story has a good ending if you tell them long enough. So everybody has an ending. We just, have to visit it at a certain time. And so that's sort of the way of this world is, everyone will end. It's just depending on what perspective we see until their end. And that's the kind of the way this, and also you have the ultimate consequences inside this scenario. If anybody can go, then you just have to, you know, it's
You just go.
the tension's there, and that's the kind of nice part is then you don't get to have the plot armor as much.
That's fair. I mean, but I mean, I just were there certain characters that had plot armor? Is there at least one or two you think, oh, I can't kill them
Well,
off?
I yes and then no, because like there were some that had plot armor in the very first season, or very first series that don't in Descendants,
Hmm.
where you sort of strip that back a little bit. I mean, obviously, as a storyteller, you don't want to end someone's story before it's done, and so that's the other thing is like you want to make sure that you can complete that character's arc. Before they go, and thankfully we've been able to do that with all of our characters. But I mean, the characters that do have plot armor are the ones that sort of have to carry the story, but there are some that you don't know if they do or not.
Hmm. But I guess then, does that make it easier to write, or are there times where you want to surprise the audience?
I do love to surprise the audience. I think that that's the fun of it is they still have to if you can defy their expectations then and they actually feel the tension of the character that they love is there, then that is ultimately the good thing that you can do from a storytelling perspective.
Hmm.
Because if they're not as engaging, if they don't feel for the characters, then they won't be able to really, get in it as deep as you'd want them to.
Yeah, because I'm actually because with the whole family stuff, really does add a little bit of like, oh man, how much of you can I trust? Because I don't know what you are, and I don't know if I can. It's like, which you've made them sort of ambiguous. Is the best term sense you don't really know. Like I said, you don't know if they're good guys or bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you toe that line of like, well, who in there is like good, who in there is bad, and it lets you play with the depth of what was going on for all those other background characters and stories. Like I couldn't get into it in the original story Survival very much because it just wasn't the time for that story. And now with Descendants, we get into the background of depth because we needed that extra time and perspective to dive into it and also use the conduit of the characters like Vera being basically a product of both worlds, and how you get to play on that fence and to do the dynamics of the storytelling that you weren't able to do before.
Well, before we get into Descendants and then headed to our ad breaks soon, there is one show before that, which is Gold Rush, which sounds the
Yeah.
most bonkers one to come up with, which was I'm going to do a Western style heist in a zombie apocalypse. Was just where did that idea come from?
That was one of my favorite stories I think I'll ever tell, because when we first started to do the characters, the four soldiers,
Mm.
the four soldiers were basically, as I have portrayed it and other soldiers have seen it, that's how the military is. A bunch of guys together, brought together from, just being part of the military, and has to get along, and every single one of them is like somebody that you went through basic training or was part of your unit. And just being able to like have a comedy inside of there that was a little bit off the wall, and you get to do things that you didn't like. The barrier of doing something that's a little bit more extreme or like off the wall, like a they're going after $1 billion in gold. Like this, just the weird storytelling that you didn't really let yourself have the opportunity for in the originals, you get to do here, was something that I loved doing. And it was probably the most fun I've ever had recording was with those guys, because they just off the wall, back and forth. A whole bunch of them have improvisation backgrounds, so they would just go at it, and it was so much fun. And then also just getting to tell this really tragic story about these characters that we lost, and using it as a way to set up, another character, and fill in some of the blanks. And it's such a weird story, but also one of my favorites.
I mean, well, it's bizarre because it also, it's four soldiers, so it does sort of become like a sitcom. This is that one of them is the butt of the joke, which I kept feeling bad for the entire
Carl. Carl, yeah.
time. There's one where it's just like involves, I know, it's just like every time. That just feels so bad. But they also deals with like there's like survivalists, like because they're because they didn't even think about when this show. I was like, oh yeah, what happens if survivors end up doing this whole thing? But even then, like
Hmm.
one of the biggest things I kept thinking of was like, you're right, they're trying to steal $1 billion worth of gold. I just keep thinking, in the apocalypse, gold's just a lump of metal now. What are you going to do with it? It's just but you spend the entire time trying to tell people, it's like, no, gold's still worth something this time. It's like, oh,
Yeah. It's the one of the most conductive metals out there. It's
mm,
in a ton of electronics. It's one of those things where it has stood the test of time through all these places, because it is this it's sort of a super metal. It's not like diamonds. Diamonds have an artificial valuation, because you can make them. You can't make gold. You can't like
yeah.
create something from nothing. And I've gone to the fence on this one a lot of times, and I've become Carl, being like, no, gold is one of these things that like does stand the test of time, because it's a precious metal. It's very, very conductive. It's actually more conductive than copper. We use it in so many different ways, and as long as humans have a value on it, that's that's what's going to happen. And we've fallen back on the gold standard so many times throughout history that paper money currency doesn't last. But this one thing seems to.
But that's why I love this. Is that, yeah, because that's the highlight of the show. Is it's pointed out that, oh yeah, people will still want gold no matter what. It's the currency is king. It will always find a way back to it. But it's just like even doing a heist in a zombie apocalypse was just like such a
Hmm.
bizarre thing. Is there any other ideas that you've wanted to do you haven't got to? You're like, oh, I wonder if I could do this type in a zombie way.
There is one, but I'm not gonna do that story. It has to do with the City of Lost Souls, which is a thing inside of Descendants.
Yeah.
And it had to do a little bit with Dot's backstory that we won't go into. So there was something there that I wanted to, but I kind of touch on it a little bit in Descendants. But that was something that I wanted to do, but I didn't really. There wasn't much of a story there to tell, and it didn't really fill in a blank that we needed. We could tell enough of it through other means. So that's the other thing too, is like if you have a story that it's good, but it needs to have all the pieces of that puzzle. It's got to have why am I listening to this story? Like Gold Rush, I mean, even though it's about the gold, It's about the relationships between the characters because that's the theme of
Yeah.
it is like at the end of the day, what is gold versus friendship versus human life versus like these things are not are immeasurable and irreplaceable. Gold can be replaced, it lasts forever, but people don't and
Mm.
relationships don't. And that was something that was like a core of that story of like in this world, what is the most important thing? Is it gold or is it people? And my answer was people.
Which is fair enough. And then we've got the most recent spin off, which is Scouts Honor, which is basically Lord of the Flies meet zombies.
Yes.
That's another one where it's just like, okay, guess we're doing with kids now. So,
Yeah, that was fun because like I got to retell a little bit of my stories from camp. Like when I actually went to Camp Emerald Bay in Catalina as a kid.
oh, did
Um,
you?
yeah, so I got to actually I went back there with my son to record some of the audio. And so he was in camp, and then I was out there with a recorder, like just getting a whole bunch of the ambience of all that because that was one of the most complicated stories just because of kids in general.
Yeah.
Um, but we didn't really get to do a lot of kids in We're Alive because A, they grow up so fast that you kind of don't get an opportunity to. Two, very difficult to work with kids sometimes just because of time and parents and all this stuff. But I just love the idea of like what it would be like to be a kid in this world and finding your place and becoming that survivalist that we never got to see that perspective because everyone's like, oh, the adults, and I was like, I want kids. I just want to see what they do, how they live in this world and how they adjust.
But not just that, in the sense it's Scouts as well, because in terms of any Scout groups, there's always the group of like the ones who know the book by heart and can do everything in it, and then there's also the ones that are sort of begrudgingly in it just to have something to do for the summer and have no clue what to do. So it's just like, were there all any old memories of like, like, oh, I want this sort of camp experience to be in the show, or stuff where it's like, oh, I want this as well.
Oh yeah. I was a really bad swimmer. So literally I projected that into the main character and how he couldn't swim very well and so that was my fault as a kid that I projected into him. Some of the other like cool kids at camp kind of not fitting in with other kids, that was something that I projected into that. Like it was almost like We're Live is a lot of therapy for me. I get to like let loose with a lot of the things that I went through in the past, just putting them into other characters and having fun with it. But it's also like that's how you get to have the real connection, and why AI, is not nearly as good as a human experience because AI doesn't experience these things, whereas we do.
Hmm. That's fair enough. Which happens. So I mean, you've gone the whole way of it, and then finally to go into Descendants, which we'll get to in the outbreak later. But just as a little touch up beforehand, I don't have to sort of talk about this. When doing Scouts Honor, when basically just doing kids,
Hmm.
was it difficult as an adult to sort of depict what would kids think?
Yeah, and what they would say too. That was the
Yeah.
trickiest part is like trying to get the language. They do speak a little bit older because we had to. I mean, you can't you can't like 6, 7 your way through all that. You have to.
What's also the fact you're not speaking kids as they are now. You're speaking as kids were in 2009.
Yeah, so you have to
So
almost backdate it a little bit. Like, what were kids saying at that time? And so
yeah.
yeah, so that's why for that story in particular is the only time I've done like a co-writer thing. So Elisa Elliott, who plays Pegs,
Mm.
wrote it. She was like the primary writer and wrote it with me. And we went back and forth changing things. I would rewrite a scene, and then she would come back here, give this revision. Like we did a lot of that. And actually, the crazy thing is the story took, I think, maybe like 5 years to write,
Wow,
because
really?
it was a long time. Well, the problem was that when I first started doing it, I actually went to the island back in 2017, and I
Mm.
went and we did a exploration of the island, and I brought the original writer that I was going to work with on it, and we went through the path of what the kids would did. We got in a Jeep, we went through the back country of the island, and because I wanted to know what the rest of the island was, because so much of it you either have to spend at the camp or at Avalon. Very, very few people have actually gone through the whole island because it's massive. Like there's sections of the island you're like, it looks like I'm out in the middle of Riverside, which is for us like in the middle of the desert out here in
Mm.
California, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. There's so much of this island. Like, there's also the other half of the island, the other side, that nobody really gets to see. And so we got to go to all these places and use them as inspiration for the story. And I have like little video journals of like the whole thing to use as reference. But then, so then it was all a matter of like finding the island. The island's a character, then finding the kids,
Mm.
which archetypes work, and then building the story around that, and then making it work. And it was really actually hard to find a co-writer on it because this is I forget the page count of it, but it was like a lot of pages. And beginning writers or writers who you say, okay, we're gonna do a 500 page epic or something like that, and they're like, oh my God, what are you thinking? This is insane.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Like, no, thank you. This is nuts. And that's about, I think it was maybe like 400 to 500 ish, but it was still a lot of pages to cover. And people just don't understand that, like, that's what this requires for audio dramas. You have to write a lot of pages. And I've
Mm.
written thousands and thousands and thousands by now. And it takes time. It really takes a lot of time and dedication and commitment to make that happen.
I mean, is that the assumption that people just assume that you are basically brilliant at dialogue now?
Yes and no, because and then it's weird because I have to write dialogue for audio drama, which means that like I am almost like tethered a little bit, and I have to do a lot of exposition inside the dialogue. So
Yeah.
sometimes things might sound a slightly clunky here and there, but the only reason they are is because I have to tell you so many things with a little amount of time, or like
Mm.
have them do something in a way that helps communicate with the audience. So it is really hard, but I will say that I've gotten pretty decent at finding the tricks to hide it as much as possible and using that sound design to illustrate in some capacity, whether it's, we're using Foley, sound effects, music. There's so many different techniques and tricks that you can do that because I do a lot of post-production as well. Matter of fact, that's what I've been doing all weekend. Just to kind of
Really, you,
help
you still
illustrate
do
that
most of
story.
it yourself?
I do. I have other editors that work on episodes too, but it becomes like a production team of because there's just so much to do that everybody's working on a different episode in different stages, and so we'll like start out with in small cuts. We'll start with vocal cuts where people are just assembling things together, finding the best takes, and then timing them out, and then I'll get it and I'll be like, no, I don't like that take. Let me swap this out. Let me do this here. Oh, we might need this for pickup later, pacing it out, and then I'll send it back with some timing cuts back. And there's a lot of back and forth through each one where I'm editing each episode in different intervals with other editors who are also editing at different intervals. So it becomes like a conglomeration of
But
everybody.
are you the final? You're the final nail of being like, okay, this is why like this goes out.
Yeah, I'm the final nail because, and I've been doing that since day one because I've been doing it for so long, and we actually have had a lot of different editors come and go with the show. And so I'm the one that's sort of like the unifying arc to make sure that they're all, have the same feel. And I'll be like, oh no, we need like let me move this footstep a little bit to the left here, or move this over here, or this isn't working here. Let me try this. So that way I kind of keep that uniformity, and it all has the same feel throughout all the episodes.
I mean, has there ever been a time where it's like you worked too hard on one and it's just everyone's been telling you just put it out there?
I feel like that was the one that I've been working on now,
Really?
because this next chapter, chapter 19 that comes out for Descendants is oh boy, the entire timeline was 100. No, it was 1 hour and 53 minutes for all three episodes.
Really?
Yes, there's one. The middle episode's 60 minutes long.
Oh,
Uh,
so that's well the longest one I think so far.
I think that's one of the longest episodes, and that's not a finale. That's just one episode. All three of them equal. It's this one was a lot, and part of me is like, and I'm like stuck in the weeds with footsteps. Like, no, move this here, shuffle this around here. The environments are very tricky in this one too because they're getting into some of the areas that are there's some environments in We're Alive that are harder than others. And
Mm.
so it's like this balancing act of how you make this work. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, we just get it out because I need to start working on the next chapter and the
Mm.
next one. And then so it's like each one of them has various stages, and I have to jump into it to be able to keep the train moving.
Yeah. Well, also I imagine just because not spoiling anybody in terms of what happened last episode, there's a lot of explanations that needs to go into what the next chapter will be.
Oh, yes.
But we'll get
Like
into that. We'll get into that.
years,
Yeah,
years of it.
we'll get into that then in a second because we're going to go to an ad break now for about 5 minutes. But guys, we're going to go more into Descendants in the second half and more into what's going to happen. So tune in for that, guys, and we'll see you guys in approximately 5 minutes. Take on, guys. Bye. Hey guys, welcome back to LOL. Sorry, Chris Smith, the best comedy show on Love to Be Radio. I am still here with the award-winning author, writer, producer, director of the famous We're Alive podcast, Mr. KC Wayland. Good to still have you here, sir.
I'm glad to be here. This is fun. I mean, I haven't talked this in depth about the show for a while, so this is really a lot of fun for me.
Oh, really? Because I was going to ask how many. Because I mean, it's not just the fact that you do this and so you are also a teacher. Which university is it? Is it now?
Chapman University in Southern California. So
Yeah.
I teach writing and I teach audio production stuff and sound design and things. So it's only a 1 day a week thing, but I love doing it.
But I just keep thinking, like, have you met anybody who has been a fan of the show, and do they just keep asking you stuff about it?
Honestly, only like once or twice. It
Really?
really has not come up that often. Maybe there are some people that are more fans that never have told me, but I've only been talked to about it like once or twice, and I've been teaching for like maybe 10 years or so. So yeah, it's.
I mean, is it a thing where, like, when they look at it, they'll know in future, like, oh, this is what he's known for now.
That might, to be honest, that might be the case. Like eventually people will be like, "Oh my gosh, like I had no idea that this became the thing." And that's because it's a film school. Weirdly enough, they prize more the visual spectrum of things versus the audio stuff. Like people, a lot of times in the film world, they just don't understand how complicated, how big this is compared to, and how much more difficult it can be than film sometimes, especially with the lengths you have to go, the in-depth sound design that's required, the production amounts, like, and just the writing alone. People don't have any idea that, like,
I
it's a
I
lot
didn't
of
think
pages.
about that, but I guess because you are basically a child of both worlds of visual and audio production. Is there still a thing where audio is still kind of looked down on?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If I tell people that I do an audio drama, they're like, "Oh, you're doing a podcast." And they use it in the most
Ah,
derogatory way possible. And it's like, do you have you don't know like what goes into this, or like honestly the opportunities I've had with the people I've directed doing this. Like the how many people can say they've like directed Lawrence Fishburne, Brendan Fraser, you just the list can go on and on with all the people that I've been able to work with through this medium, and it's been amazing. It's been incredible. And it provided so many more opportunities than I had ever been presented in the visual world.
damn. Well, I'm surprised that's still going even now. But let's go back into the shows because that's what everyone wants to talk about.
Yeah,
So
let's dive in.
Descendants, which is the most recent one that's still going right now. I mean, there's an episode coming out in a couple of days' time.
Tuesday,
Yeah,
two days.
chapter 19, which will be quite a lot. We won't get into it that much, but it's just Descendants on the whole, set 18 years later in the future of the original story.
Technically, I think 17.
Is it 17? Sorry.
Yeah, I think 17. Yeah.
Okay, but it's an interesting one because, like you said, you wanted to show basically kids, teenagers, their perspective in this world, which I like.
Hmm.
But what's also the case is that you also have to build a world 17 years in the future of a zombie apocalypse. So,
Yes.
what was the most difficult part about that?
I mean, honestly, the crazy part is like after We're Alive Story of Survival, I literally started working on Descendants because it took so long to do the world building to figure out all the things of like it's almost like you're taking a timeline and you're hitting fast forward, but there's all that gap in between that you have to fill in to make sure it makes sense to where you end up. So literally like I don't know if it's you won't be able to see it here, but like I have entire maps of
Oh
the
wait, oh no, I
entire.
see. Is that the map of We're Alive?
There's the US map, and then here's Westport alone. And so I had to like develop where all these areas were, what happened there, how they developed, what sort of structures they have. And while that is, it almost feels like wasted time in a way because you're not building the characters, you're just building the world. But then once the characters go through them, then it actually makes sense. And then you're actually able to make sure that it is real and that it has a timeline that built to that point.
No, but I like it because it is also the sense that with the building the characters, you do have to build the world. It's just that they're going to
Hmm.
interact with it, especially with the three main areas, which is Westport, the UA, and the Republic. Westport
Yeah.
being the smaller one, I think. I take
It's,
it.
I mean, if you look at the map, it's like it's tiny. It's like
Yeah, it's
this
a city, isn't
big
it?
compared to the Republic is there, then the UA is like all of that. But
Yeah.
but size doesn't matter when it comes to like your the size of the air because you almost have to defend more land. You
Mm.
have almost more problems with the larger amount of space you have. But then again, this is all of like a good chunk of LA, which is a fair amount of space and lots of stuff inside there.
But that's the thing where it's just like even making story survival, which is basically set in LA, which is where you are and that sort of thing. Was there any love to sort of certain locations that you were paying tribute to in there, or was there any bits where you're like, oh, kind of should pop this into the show just to show my appreciation for LA, especially the fact that in the show you've made Westport the only quote unquote nice people.
Yes. There are other nice people in the world, but the Westport is one of the better ones. It almost like is I imagine CJ is one of the reasons for that. It like the colony when it was first founded under Marcus way back in the first story.
Yeah.
Um like under the wrong intentions and I just CJ is one of my favorite characters in that she just it's almost like she's one of the best leaders that they could have had and created a society that was built around that, built around like you actually have it's kind of a metaphor for the story in a way where it's like through cohesion you're able to survive better than if you're working against each other
Mm,
because it's like two people working on a project versus one and one trying to work separately. It's just you don't get as much done, and so it's like that's the idea of it. But there are areas of LA that I like wanted to illustrate in some ways, like Twin Towers Jail. Like
yeah.
the largest jail in the world, I wanted to highlight in there in some way. We have LAX, which was part of one of the storylines. I will say that there is one gratuitous plug later on for my favorite pizza joint coming up in a later chapter. That is has been around since I was little. And I basically put them in the story as kind of like a bit of a story point because I wanted to.
And maybe I hopefully you've done them at least some good in that way.
No, no, no. Yes, I do quote unquote say they make a darn good pizza.
I'll give you that. But I mean, it's also because you do sort of like expand not just in terms of characters with the sort of middle ground between good and evil, not just there but also in the states. In the sense you've got Westport, which are sort of the nice ones. I'm saying you've got the Republic, which are sort of wrong, but like you said, you know what they're doing. You can
Yeah.
understand why they're going. And then you got the UA, which are kind of in the middle. Like you don't know if they're good or bad.
Yeah, the UA is not exactly like a big player in this world. They will take part in it a little bit. I won't spoil too many things about that, but they do. It's almost like imagine you had a whole bunch of countries because that's what they are now is a bunch of the states in the UA. They're a bunch of countries like kind of squabbling between each other, fighting over resources. They're unified, but at the same time, none of them are really standing out because they're all at odds with each other.
Yeah,
In some capacity, not like they're warring with each other for per se. There's a couple conflicts that have happened in there, but it's just they don't have the cohesion, so it's not exactly like the best place. It's sort of like the UA I kind of treat as like the Wild West, where it's a
yeah.
bunch of little places that are sort of kind of working together, but like if you kill someone, you may just get away with it.
Mm. But I mean, see, Descendants focuses on three main characters, which is Nick, Vera, and now Alex.
Hmm.
Uh, but Nick's being the special one because he is not spoiled, you quote unquote immune.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the infection, which I mean, was that always going to be a central plot for you writing that about him, or was that something where it's just like, no, that's just the side bit of him?
No, that's a main point. It's a main point because it makes him unique in that he has different concerns about his own health and safety and welfare, and he will put himself more at risk, and sometimes those around him because he doesn't have to think of that one aspect where everybody else does. So
Mm,
it also kind of makes him a little bit selfish. It also is the grounds for how his character grew up because so many people like ruminated and knew about him. It's almost like he becomes sort of a nepo baby in a bad way in this
Hmm.
world where there's so much pressure on him to do well that he actually like had some bad stuff happen where he like started to go down a bad path and did some things he is not proud of, and he sort of had to learn about this world, and that's sort of what his journey is now, is like not only figuring about the world but figuring out about himself and how he might be able to fit into it.
I suppose that's a difficult thing to do there, not just with Nick, but with all three characters, in the sense that with a sort of survival, you have the background of like, or it's the safety net of, okay, these are just ordinary people that have, some of them never been in conflict at all or had any experience whatsoever. This time, at least for the three main characters, they all have experience. They all
Yep.
know some things of what to do. So how difficult is it to sort of not make them clueless?
Yeah, so the one thing I love about it is like in the previous series, like everyone has to learn how to handle themselves in these environments, but now I can
Yeah.
just build off of that. I don't have to start from zero with these characters. They know about the infection, they know the rules of the apocalypse. I don't have to re-explain a whole bunch of stuff. But then what I do get to explore with is how they get to see the rest of the world, like because they have lived really sheltered lives. They don't have a lot of experience. It's almost like soldiers getting deployed for the first time off to war. It's like you get to you don't you have all these ideas of what it might be like over there, but once you actually get there and you see that like the people around you and the environments and the life between the ultimate conflicts and the times of peace are, it's very hard to deal with, and sort of that is sort of a little bit of my deployment inside of that. It's like how you have these two extremes of like I'm going to go back in my bunk and play PS2, and then tomorrow I'm going to go on Rot Irish that gets ambushed every single day. It's like,
Yeah.
you know.
I suppose, was it easy or difficult to basically just then wipe the slate, because in the sense of like Descendants is based on the younger generation, but the older generation, the original, are still kind of there in some regard,
Yeah.
but in a way that they were minor characters now. So was there a love of like, oh, I'm going to keep them in, or sort of like, no, these have to be about these kids now?
It is a bit of passing the torch. It is somewhat that. They also do play sort of an important role in the background of those characters a bit in how they unfold. Like I use them a little bit more in the first season of Descendants because I did want to have them like there's a line from Bert that's like we kind of have to trust them now. We have to like
Yes.
let them do their thing.
How in
Um
God's name you made Bert still alive when he's 80? I'm a little bit impressed.
85 and still kicking.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it has a little bit of that, but also they still play an important role, and that role is still going to be there. It just isn't as much as it was before. It's a different capacity. So they do become more supporting cast, but then I do kind of go back and forth a little bit. Like there's some characters that do have a little bit more of a stake in what we see here, and trying not to spoil the most recent episode, but especially with one of the characters that just showed back
Yeah,
up.
we won't go into that much, but like it just season one, which in my mind is basically you doing, in the most broad sense of the term, zombies doing the Hunger Games,
Hmm.
which I'm never surprised with that whole scenario, especially with I try to remember the name of the city, Prism,
Prim,
yeah,
Prim.
Prim, that's it, which is basically Vegas, which
Hmm.
I mean, which is also about Fallout as well, but it's like creating that sort of world of like, oh, these are what these people would do, and I'm going to put this
Hmm.
in situations of survival. It's sort of an interesting dynamic of like, okay, how do I make these characters seem terrified despite knowing that they should know what they're doing, or like, how do I change the infected as well? I mean, that's a good one. How, in your mind, had the infected evolved?
Yeah, so that was one of the big things about why Prim was important was it put these characters outside of their comfort zone, forced them into situations that they aren't fully equipped. They have to learn how to work with each other. It gave us an opportunity to learn about those characters in that environment and let them grow, especially Nick and Vincent, letting those two
Yeah.
form a bond and understand each other for later purposes was a really big thing. And then also Prim let us explore a lot of the infection of the other parts of the world in one location. So we got
Mhm.
to really understand and see sort of what these creatures are about and how they've evolved and now how many generations they are down in a short amount of time rather than having to go to all these individual locations. And Prim is still plays a part in some capacity with some things going on with it, and it's really interesting. Like yes, there was this Hunger Games-esque of it, but also it's like the catalyst that will start a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to be learning about here very shortly.
I mean, I always say Hunger Games because you literally took people, put them in a stadium, and told them to survive. I just kept listening, thinking, somewhere there's going to be a Hunger Game reference to this, or at least a Fallout Vegas reference to this. If anyone
Yeah.
knows games out there.
I mean that it's Prim is one of those interesting things because like the reason why it is the reference inside of Fallout Vegas is because it's so far removed from Vegas, but also like still kind of Vegas. So that's why they
Yeah,
used it there. And I was the same way as like, cool, we don't want to go into Vegas because Vegas is like would
a
be
death
like a
trap.
yeah, it would be a death trap. So let's not go into there, but let's choose the next big thing in the middle of the desert, and then you have this safety seclusion there in proximity with it all. But yeah, so there it wasn't so much the reference to Fallout, although I am a big Fallout fan. Vault Dwellers was a little
I
throw in
gathered that
later.
because of quote unquote, just as spoilers, the Atlas, where even
Hmm.
not the most recent episode, but like you made the official colors of the Atlas like yellow and blue, which
Yes. Weirdly enough, actually, so if you look at the logo for the Titan Missile Squadron, which is what they're essentially in, it is blue and yellow. Like it's
yeah,
lightning bolts and it's against blue. So it's actually a reference to that. I didn't make a reference until that was the Fallout colors until you just said so now.
you
So
really you didn't because
mm.
I kept thinking I was like, oh you little bucket, if you start making them wear jumpsuits of yellow and blue and yellow
I love that. Not intentional, but I will take it.
if I listen to a future episode and realize you've taken that, I want credit there. But that's amazing. But I mean, so I know you can't spoil that much, but like, how far along into the rest of season two are you?
So season two is completely done and recorded, and we are in rough cut stages with those now. Rough cut meaning that we're like putting the sound effects in. The voices are all set.
Mm,
All the takes are there. We've done all the pickups. It's pretty much good to go. Music is still being written for the last two chapters because we have to work so far ahead so that the music can be written with it because so much of what we do, like the music does a really good job of living inside the scenes and not taking over,
yeah.
and you have to work ahead in order to be able to do that. And then I'm also recorded some stuff from season three and written a good chunk of it. All the outlines are done to the very end. I just have to write the individual pages that kind of get us to the end while juggling all the production stuff.
So you're that far ahead, which is quite impressive. Then, so does that mean that when an episode drops now and people are still commenting on it, you have to remember what it was because it was such a long time ago?
Yes and no. I mean, I've worked on the episodes recently, so I know it's really fresh in my head. But we recorded these episodes like a year ago, sometimes even further than that. Like there was a part I think in one of the episodes that was almost 2 years ago.
Wow.
Because I recorded it so early, because I knew that that character was not going to come back for a while. So I wrote ahead those scenes before I had even finished writing the end of season two, so that I could record it and put it in there, and as ultimately save that person a trip out, to have to do more recording sessions.
I mean that's impressive for the planning. Do you do that with a lot of characters in there where you have to sort of like, oh, I gotta make sure I write these out because I don't know what their plans will be.
Yeah, no, there's scenes in the very last episode of the entire series that I've already recorded.
Wow,
That won't come out for another probably 2 years.
that is impressive, sir. And I know you can't give us that much, but could you at least give us what are the hints for the rest of season two? What's an inkling that we can give people in terms of what to expect?
Well, I would say that the name of the next chapter, Dwelling in the Past, is going to be, it has multiple meanings. We might get a little bit of a flashback of different things that will kind of help patch in some of the holes that may be in the knowledge of what we have right now. There's a lot of the fun thing about this is I love like working ahead so that I can kind of work backwards so that some of the reasons why certain things happen and it leads there in a positive way. Um, and then there's a lot of relationships that are kind of have not come back together, that we need to do. that we need to see how they when they do come back, what that's going to be like. Because season two is a lot about the personal growth of a lot of the individual characters, letting them be on their own, see who they are in their own capacity, and then now we're going to sort of maybe come back together in some ways and see how they are. I mean, that's one of the big things that's we're seeing now is letting an old character come back and seeing how that's going to impact and learning about where they've been and what that means.
I mean, that's yeah. So we won't spoil the character, but like in terms of another thing that's kind of not really spoilery because you mentioned in there, but like, is there inkling of like a war, like a war between the three states?
Potentially. Potentially that could be something that's coming up, or maybe not. Maybe it won't go that direction. I kind of play on both of those ends. There are bigger conflicts on the horizon. There's a lot of things that are building to that, but there's a lot of pieces that haven't come into play yet, and
Mm.
so we're gonna see how those unfold, and all the characters in some capacity play into the bigger conflicts that are going to come out, and we're just seeing this barely starts of some of those journeys that are going to lead us into there, and some big events have not happened yet that will then add into that.
Oh, I can't wait for that
As
then.
vague as I can be, but as specific as I can be.
It is fair. It's fair. It's your show, but it's also yeah, like you got to give people something to listen to it. I mean, not the fact that you need. I think Descent is still like top 10 listen to podcasts in the fiction world, which is amazing.
Still going strong and still trying to keep up the quality, which is never easy.
I mean, is there a bit of a shock or surprise that like not at the age, but 15 years later, especially even after COVID, all that stuff, like are you surprised that it's still going strong?
Um, yes and no, because I have always had the feeling that if you build it, they will come, and if you do a good story and you put the time into it and the storytelling, people will appreciate it and know it. Like that's the thing that we do that a lot of others may not is like for every minute that you hear is at least an hour of work, at least. And you just add it up and it gets crazy, but like there's so much time and effort put into the smallest little details that like once you listen back, you're like, oh, I didn't even pay attention to that, and there it is. And so that's the kind of storytelling that I like, where it's like you value the listener's time as much as possible. You don't do like anything cheap tricks, and you do your best to do the best storytelling that you can. And that's why like when people are like, why is this taking so long to come out? Why'd you take a break off here? And it's like, look, this stuff gets hard. It's expensive, and we've
Well,
constantly
I mean,
tried to evolve.
well, that's even I imagine because I mean the expensive it is one thing because I mean back in the early 2000s, audio equipment was quite a lot.
Yeah.
I take it. And now these days, whilst maybe some prices and things have gone more and cheaper, it is still expensive to do. You know, I
the
mean,
labor the labor has gone high, and like you want to be able to pay your actors a decent amount for their time and efforts, and the editing teams too. It's like these things take a lot of time, and honestly they end up taking more as you go along because it gets more complicated. You can never dial back in quality. You always have to continually exceed expectations.
yeah, which I imagine you've appreciated as the years have gone by. Well, it's just the later seasons where it's just like has there ever been something in terms of sound or audio in Descendants which you could do now that you wish you could have done in Story of Survival?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, like the amount of Foley stuff that we do now compared to what we did in the original, we do a lot more now. Like when they're going through the original tower, there is so much of like the same squeak of the floor than when they're walking, and like we don't really do as much of the Foley of that. So like that's the kind of stuff that I wish we did a little bit more of. But then it also takes so much more time to do that kind of Foley, and we didn't have the facilities for it. Like when we first started doing We're Live recording, we didn't have our own space to record. We had to use the space we had at the university that I got to use because I was associated with it. But now we have our own recording space, so we can bring in our own actors, do their different times, and we're not like subject to some of the restrictions that we had before. Thankfully, it was hard to deal with, but like even now, like in my office, I have all these Foley surfaces. I got wood that we walk on, carpets, and I can do a lot of the scenes in real time that I wasn't able to do before. So it has gotten a little bit easier in that regard, but it's taking more time because you're spending more time on the smallest details.
No, well, I mean, even learning from the fact that you did stop motion animation shows that you are definitely a man of patience, which you and timing, which you need to do with that. Um, but another thing to go into is the fact that is the infected themselves, which I imagine for a lot of people thinking, oh, that must be easy to sound. All you have to do is sound like you're dying. But we talked a little bit about that in the break. How much of a number does that on your voice?
It's painful. Like there's some because I like to do I honestly one of the things I love doing is I love doing the infected voices because like I have no filter for like holding back when it comes to some of the stuff like like I love doing it and some people are like a little reserved. I'm like no, I don't have any reservations. And I also like to try different things like in the booth where I'll be like like I'll pull different pieces of skin and try things with my voice and practice manipulations and I'll do a lot of the big ones of oh, oh, like and just find a way and then we manipulate them in the computer and do more stuff and it always comes more alive to like you do the scene and then you can do it again and be the infected and like interact with the characters and
Yeah.
so yeah so it can you can shred your voice to the point of needles but ultimately it makes it feel real and organic and then we just do a different process for almost for each different species of infected that are out there.
Because it's not just you. There are others as well who do the zombie voices as well. Do they sort of
Yes.
like I mean, do any of them have like an appreciation of like, oh, that all I have to do is grunt. Oh, that's easy. And then later it's like, oh my god, this is so hard.
Yeah, no, and but honestly, weirdly enough, they I get news reports back from when they've done it and they're like, this is the most fun I've ever had. Like I loved doing this because as an actor, it's almost like you get to do some of the very base of what is required of an actor. Like I get to do voices, I get to do, zombie stuff and this slight it's not really much of a spoiler, but like one of the Wallace sessions we did recently, like I give the actors who are performing the infected, they have dialogue, quote unquote, they have actual words they have to say as infected. And so they have to
Yes.
like use that, and it's not English. It's completely, it's a made up language that they have to know, but there's actual references, so they can't use certain words. They have to use other ones, and there's pronunciations of how you do it, and so it's really a lot of fun to do. And I think probably it's one of those things where it's like you can kind of fill in a whole bunch of places with those, and it makes sense.
But I suppose it's also difficult because you're also directing. You're directing everyone out there. I mean, because you directed a number of good people, especially like, from your actors, well, even to like well-known actors like Lawrence Fishburne and Brendan Fraser, as you just mentioned. But I mean, when you were directing early in your life, were
Hmm.
there things where you think like, oh, I don't know if I could do this as a early starting director, which now you could be like, oh, I'll just tell you this as it is. Like, what have you learned in your years of directing?
Yeah, I've grown a lot, and I still have a lot of room to grow. And actually, weirdly enough, like you have some growth periods, and then you have some slightly regressive periods. Like when I first started directing, I learned a lot because used to direct from the booth. I used to be like behind the glass, being like, okay, let's try it like this and do this. Now I don't do that at all. I'm in the booth with the players in the space, developing the relationships, getting the trust. I'm inside there. I have to be quiet, obviously, but if I'm reading in the scene, I get to read with them inside the space. It's so obtrusive to have that voice come over the headsets and be like, okay, I'm giving you a note, rather than just being there organically inside that space. So that was a big step, I think, in terms of figuring out how to direct. And then also just learning how what directing is. Like it's a lot about the relationships. It's a lot about getting actors comfortable in the space to be able to perform, making sure that they feel good inside that space because you will get a variety of actors from various different skill sets. Some actors, they come in and they're not warmed up. They're like a little bit nervous or scared, and you gotta, get them comfortable, get them relaxed so they can get inside their places, whether it's kids, adults, everybody works differently. And I've had to learn as a director how you work with each one. And it's gotten easier, but there are some that get a little harder. Like I think I've regressed slightly in that I'm more. There's sometimes where I'm actually like giving a bit, not so much a line read, but like an inflection read. Like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, the inflection here, just to try and save time, rather than give you like have you do this take like 12 different times. This is sort of the inflection I'm looking for at this part that will tell us a little bit about this word here. And some actors don't like it. So
I was gonna ask, is there a conversation between you and the actors of all times in the sense of like you giving like, oh, this is what I want to do, this is what I want the character to do because you wrote it, but then there's the actor who's like, no, I want to sound like this because they're voicing it.
yeah, no, and it becomes a discussion. And actually, that's something that I'm very observant of now is like, I will communicate to the actor, be like, look, is it okay if I give you an inflection read because of this? I'm just trying, and 99% of the time, they're, yeah, yeah, please let me know because that way we don't have to go down this path of doing it like 20 times. Because there have been times where I've had some frustrating directing days where I'm like trying to get something for someone to get in a certain spot and they're just not getting it. And the more that someone works with me, the more they get in the character, the easier it gets. But sometimes the shortest characters that are in the smallest parts are the hardest ones to direct because they're only in for a small period of time. You almost need to make sure it fits against the other things because sometimes you don't get to record those in sync. Most of the actors get to record with each other, but some of those one-off characters don't get to do that, and so you have to every single one of those is directed a little differently.
I mean, has it ever happened where like you've written a bit of dialogue, you've got it in there, they're voicing it, and then the way they sound it out doesn't sound right, and then you've had to change it yourself in the booth.
Yeah, that's happened only a handful of times. It's very, very rare. But it has happened to where we've had to swap somebody out. It happened with a more main character in the third season of We're Alive, the original one. Where I'm not going to say which character it was, but we had someone come in, they just couldn't embody the character well, and it just wasn't working. And it made more sense to replace them later on. It was a difficult process to do, for sure. And I hate doing it. I really don't like doing it. I'd rather
No, but
be,
it's fair if they don't sound what you want them. I mean, because I imagine is that thing like how much of like even with Michael or Sol, like you wanted them to sound a specific way.
yeah. So we'll do a lot of casting stuff where I feel like the casting process, the more stringent you are in casting, the easier it will be later on. There's this the unspoken rule where like 90% of directing is casting. So just getting the right person is really important. But then sometimes you get in the booth and it changes a little bit. Like you don't, like something happens and so there's times where it can be very, very difficult. And I'm under the impression that you can direct most actors into getting them into the right spot, but there are times it just doesn't work for the story.
Has it? But then on the flip note of that, has it ever happened where you've written the piece, they've said the piece, and the piece itself that you've written is like, oh, that doesn't sound right. Now so that I'll just change the writing there.
Yeah. No, that's the thing in our booth is we typically do like three takes where we'll do the first take is just first takes ends up being almost like a warm up, but you get it for safety because sometimes they'll add in stuff later on in other takes. You're like, oh no, I need to go back to that. So that's a good first take is usually like it's kind of like a rehearsal, but you don't want to waste it. Why not? The second take that you get is usually that's the one where they're like, okay, I know the scene, I've warmed up a little bit, I'm good here. If they do pretty well in that scene, I'll usually give them like the third take will be like I call a kitchen sink take. Give us
Yeah.
whatever you got. Give us something different. You know the lines on the page, take it off the page, make it your own. Take moments where you think they are, change it up, and that's usually where we can see something shine because that's where they get to insert themselves a little bit inside there. And it also depends on the actor because we do get a lot of people from the improv spaces. My wife did a lot of improv in the past, so I will pull people from improv backgrounds because generally they like to play in the booth. And sometimes before a take, I'll be like, "All right, you ready? Let's play."
I mean, has do you have like a certain moment where an actor improvised the bit, and you're like, oh, I'm keeping that in there.
I would say a lot of Gold Rush. Gold Rush was like because we had very strong actors who like went off the cuff many times. There's so much on the cutting room floor for Gold Rush where they would go off on a tangent, and sometimes they just don't work. They're like, oh, okay, we'll cut that here. But like, there's a lot of little throwaway lines that will get thrown in there. And eventually, I will release the. People have been asking for me to do it, to release a script of Gold Rush, and I'll do it where they can see what's been improvised versus what was originally on the page.
Are we just going to get a bit? It was like there's like 4 pages here. What the hell was the rest of this? It was just all them.
There's the it happens. It happens. Sometimes you gotta like let them play, and especially when the characters know their character a lot and they've been living it in a while and they just want to try something. You got to be open to it. But then there's sometimes it's just like, "Well, no, no, we're not gonna use that one."
Yeah, well, I imagine there's some scenes where it's just like, okay, that was about an hour long. We can't use any of that, but I'm glad you had fun there.
Yeah, it
So
didn't go that long, but yeah, sometimes you lose a couple minutes here or there. But I mean, it's audio, it's a booth. As long as you're at time on your schedule, why
So
not?
if Goldbox Rush was the one that was probably the most improvised, what was the series then would you say that was the most stick to the script?
I would say we're alive in the very beginning because like I'm still learning our feet in terms of like what the production was, still learning how to direct, still like it almost was like weirdly enough recorded in order. Like we like the announcer was when we first recorded the first episode, like the stuff that didn't need to be recorded with the main cast was recorded with the main cast in order because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do things out of order, and now we jump around so much. It's crazy how like we'll go from here to here to here to here because certain people are on certain days and certain things are it's easier to bunch up scenes with just those characters and then jump around a little bit.
I mean, at the moments we just look back and thought, why did I do that? Why did I do them? And why did I do this and that?
Yeah, I can't go back to some of those original recordings and like, oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like we've been doing this for 16 years, almost 17 now, and it's like you grow with it. You grow with in time and you learn what works, what doesn't work, and that's the thing that I think that we have done well is learn to grow. Learn if what doesn't work, figure out our mistakes and build from there.
Yeah, I mean, because I always feel that one of the things that most fiction audio people do is that they'll always find a way to put themselves in it. And whilst you have done a little bit with the zombie voices, and this just shows how much I'll know this listening to the whole thing. Has there been a particular character that you've wished to voice yourself?
I've done one. So
Which one?
the teacher, the very first episode is me, and also the teacher comes back at the end of the fourth season, at the very end. So the teacher's still the teacher there, and so
Okay,
that's me.
okay, I'll forgive myself a little bit there because that from the first episode, that's a lot of episodes to go. So I'll give
Yes,
myself
it's
time.
very small. But every so often, I've done a little background character. I actually did play on one of the most recent episodes. I did attempt to be the doctor for Alex, but
Oh,
it didn't
really?
work. It sounded too much like me. So I did the entire thing with him in the scene, and then I went back and I'm like, no, no, this sounds too much
Do you
like
not
me.
like hearing yourself?
Yes. And I also had other people listen. They're like, no, it sounds too much like you. And I'm like, because I actually am a character in the world. That teacher does actually have other stuff. And so it was important to me not to spoil that. Because actually, there is a video out there for We're Alive. I think it's called Zero Hour from Frontier, where actually I do portray that character. That teacher is a character in the world, and he is part of the UA.
Really?
Hmm.
That's quite impressive. Just I'm surprised about how much background you gave up your bit of a character.
Oh, he's he has I had a leg surgery, so he also has a leg injury. So I kind of I and there is a picture of the character who remarkably looks like me.
I mean, that's also a thing to dive into just for a second before we get into the quick fire question. But it's just like with this, with any fandom out there, of course, it comes with a lot of things. Comes with its own Wikipedia, which I've looked, which is real fun. But it also comes with its own fan art. You know,
Oh yeah.
particularly the way that they've drawn the characters. So, has there ever been any fan art of the certain characters where people have drawn them and you look at them going, "Oh, that's how you see him or her."
Yeah. That's a lot of I mean there's a lot of the soldiers will be drawn in different ways. Like the ethnicity of Saul seems to change a lot.
Really?
And yeah, yeah, everyone has a different perspective. Riley as well. Riley is I have seen some very different perspectives of Riley, which I think is great.
What's been the most surprising?
There was one that was just the way that she moved was almost like a water dancer. Kind of was like, whoa, okay, all right. That's
I mean,
that's kind of cool.
there's art of Descendants where you put the main three characters up there. So was there a bit of
Hmm.
like that's how they actually look like? Oh, damn, I gotta change this artwork now.
Yeah, well, that's the I really for the Descendants artwork, I really wanted to try and portray them so people had a visual reference for them. It also is like one of those things where an audience there are certain audience members that need a little assistance. They you want to give them something to build off of. And by creating those visuals of those characters, I bet it did help a bunch of listeners understand who these people are and a
Yeah,
little bit more about that. And also the big thing is that the previous artwork is all about this just gross defective,
yeah.
zombies. I'm like, no, let's bridge that gap.
Hmm.
Let's show the people that it is about the people, that it is about their story and shows the diversity of the cast and the backgrounds so that people have an idea of what it is they're getting into versus it's just gore or whatever.
Speaking as a listener, it can help a little bit to be like, okay, this is what the main character is supposed to look like, so I can visualize a little bit. But then there's also ones where it's just like, I don't know. Bert, I've known for ages. I have no idea what he looks like. It's like or stuff like the Walrus or like Alex. I have no clue what they're supposed to look like. But it's like I can guess. That's
Yeah.
the way to do it.
I
You know.
mean, you're participating. You are what you see as Bert is absolutely right.
Yeah. I don't know who I picture him. I just like he's some. I guess I imagine it was like a more older Robert De Niro in my mind. Or
Yeah.
just gruffed up a little bit.
A little white beard. I mean, that's the white beard is something that one of the few descriptors we given him is like he's kind of getting like Gandalf. He's just letting it go.
Oh God, Gandalf in zombies. That'd be amazing. Um, okay, so we're getting to the last 15 minutes of the show, so we're going to get into the uh, the quick fire round questions, which are not like you have to answer them quickly, but it's just like stuff where these are hard questions, but I want you to just give me as much of a straight answer as you can.
Ooh,
Even though
okay. Ooh.
I know that you're in a weird position because there's a lot of stuff that you can look back on, but we'll get into it. So, first one, easiest episode to make.
Ooh.
Actually, I'll make it easy. Easiest chapter to make. I'll give you an out there.
I will say chapter 5, Lady and the Beast. I think that's the
Really?
name of it. It was the growth episode between Bert, Lizzie, and Saul. And that was one of the easiest ones I think because it was a shorter chapter. It's not
Mm.
very long. It was also I got away from having to have so many characters in a scene. And I learned to love having this small amount of characters and these duos and trios. I was like, this is much more effective. The more you can diversify your cast and to get some of these smaller scenes, the easier it is to understand. And also, you don't have to have that third person sitting in the wings, like having to say something. Otherwise, they disappear.
Fair
Um,
enough.
and so, like, really getting into those characters and letting them come to life and letting them tell their stories. That was, I think, one of the easiest chapters there. And then I kind of do a little bit more of that nowadays.
I imagine that was one of where especially you were allowed to give them something to breathe. Like, yeah, you don't have to have exposition or something like that.
Yeah, I get to talk about yourselves. Talk
Hmm.
about like, let's do this reveal about Lady is I got to get back to my girl. It's a dog versus
Yeah,
being
just
a
say it's a
person.
damn dog. You stupid. Yeah. Okay.
And
Because
Lady was weirdly enough, Lady was actually I think originally going to be a bird.
that would have been even harsh. I would have. If it's a dog, I would have been like, okay, fine, it's a dog. But if you made Lady a bird, I would have been like, dude, shoot that thing. That's food now. uh, okay, so like, because we'll encompass all the shows in this if it's harder or easier. So that's the easiest chapter to do. Quote unquote. Next one, hardest chapter to do.
This next one,
There's next chapter
chapter
19.
chapter 19 of Descendants. I don't even know the revision number on it, but it's probably in its 50s.
I'm
Because
kidding. Really?
that's not me rewriting the thing 50 times. That's like how many changes I rewrite them, not rewrite them, but I like change things, polish out, move stuff around. This one was very, very difficult because it was a matter of getting all these character moments to work, um, and a lot of background exposition. It's easy to be cheesy. So I'm giving information that needs to be clearly communicated in a way that's just not, it's not as much an information dump, but also we have to tell the audience a lot of information. So it's like, it is a real big balancing act. And this one was probably one of the more difficult ones.
I mean, not to go into that much because of spoilers, but has there been moments where, like, because of the way you've done the shows in order, has there been something where, when writing this, you'd be like, "Oh, this will happen," but then someone's been like, "No, but you already explained that this happened." Then you're like, "Oh, bugger it all! I got to change this now."
Not thankfully, I'm gonna knock on wood here. That hasn't happened, but I have gone back and fixed something before it has released. And actually, I think that there was one time in chapter 24 where Scratched referred to a Mauler as Puck, and then we had another character as Puck later on. We went back and had her re-record it, and the character's name was changed to Biscuit instead of Puck because I changed the name of Puck, and I forgot that I had already used that name previously. So I was like,
how long were you in it? Where you were, until you were told, or you just found out yourself?
I was probably in season 3 when someone had mentioned that when Puck actually showed up. They're like, "Oh, is this the same character here?" And I'm like, "What same character?" That was a throwaway. I threw that. I named that Mauler just because I
You
imagined they
needed
were
a
a
name.
hockey player. Because I like making short names for characters or associations with things. Like that's why we have the animals, is because they have animal associations, and you don't have to learn another character's name, and it's easy to remember an animal.
No, I appreciate
Um,
that. I also imagine that's why Dot exists.
yeah, a little bit. Well, Dot had a couple more things, but yeah, it was meant to be like short, sweet, and to the point, kind of like the character.
Yeah.
But yet the naming of them is important. But that one character was like, oops.
Like a damn it, got to change it now. Okay, so then going on characters, then easiest character to write for.
Oh, Bert. Bert's always easy. I mean, I just do the most gruffiest old boomer speak that I can, and it just comes to you.
I mean,
It's
you mentioned that several characters are based on people, including yourself. Was Bert was Bert based on anyone?
my dad has some part in it, but very it's almost like a merging of him and a previous gunnery sergeant that I know. So it's that's kind of the idea of him is it's a bit of column A, little column B, and then you just push it to the bit of extreme.
I mean, because your father served, right? He's
Yeah,
also
he was a Marine. So he was
so
a
so
Marine and I was Army.
so there was another history. So was there a moment where your dad was thinking like, that's not how this is what Marines should sound like?
No, weirdly enough, he actually hasn't listened to too many of the Bert episodes. But I will say though that like we did a live show once and we brought up the tuna sandwich story, and then he had to come on the mic and give his side of the story. And I'm like, all right, all right, fine.
Feel like that. I'm not letting you tell her this is the way I'm done.
He's hamming it up. He loved the attention. I was like, all right,
Fair
Dad.
enough. And now on the flip side, hardest character to write for.
I'd say Oliver Jeremy is difficult. That one's a tricky one because he's everything he says is calculated, and has a lot of different meanings. So he's one.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'd say he's probably the one of the hardest.
I mean, is it just because of like what his background is, or what you expect him to do in the future?
It's a mix of both because like he will say something. It's almost like the titles of the chapters. They all have double meanings.
Mm.
He's saying one thing, doing another. He's pulling strings that you may not even be fully aware of within the background of what's going on. And he was definitely probably one of the trickier characters to do. And also another character that had to do a fair amount of information dump about the backgrounds of the family, but still make it interesting and digestible all at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mean, him and Dean are sort of the expo dump on the families, weren't they? You know.
Yeah. And so like I want to give you all this information, but I also have to make it organic inside of a conversation and make it like feel like it's coming from the characters instead of just me being like, so this is what happened, see?
Yes. Here's the entire plot. I'll just tell you now.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. I mean, this is just going to be the fun one to do, but of all the shows, which one's your favorite?
Gold Rush. Gold Rush has been, I mean, it fell at a good time in my life in terms of like the production. I enjoyed a lot of what it was. Each chapter was incredibly fun. It also was a massive experimentation with the medium, like trying different things. Some things work, some things different, that hadn't been done before. Like the violin scene is still, in my opinion, one of my favorite scenes. I would have modified it a little bit because I felt like I may have gone too cheap of a joke with the horse thing at the time. But just the fact that
Yeah,
like
I
yeah,
think you did
there's
well on it.
me in my head, I don't know. But the one thing I loved about it though was that you have the character becoming inebriated and it affecting the music in which they're playing, and it's overlapping both scenes, going back and forth.
Mm.
And it's such a beautifully played instrument. And actually, the name of that song is Carol's Song. It's a dedication to my grandmother who got
Oh,
me into audio stuff way back in the day. She was a very big avid audiobook listener. And so Gloria's grandma that she speaks of so fondly is me speaking fondly of my grandmother.
well then I raise my glass to her for that, for a long career
Cheers, Carol.
that she's done for you.
Yeah, she was a very important figure in my life. And it was it's the creative side,
Mm.
like a real
Okay,
big creative.
fair enough then. I'm not going to ask you what's your least favorite because that's just too harsh. But I'll
Least
say
favorite, least favorite what?
show.
Oh, least favorite episode?
No, well,
Ooh.
yeah, well, no, because I already did what's the hardest one. But so which one's just like which one you just don't want to listen to anymore?
Oh, ooh, that is
You
a
don't have
good
to answer that. I was
question.
just I know because that's tough.
It's a tough one because I try to make them all equally good. I think that, huh, I say there's maybe sections of Lockdown a little bit, maybe. So
Okay,
Lockdown was good, but I think because of the environment that it's in, it doesn't have as much repeat listening experience for me.
okay, fair enough. I
Because
wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting you to answer that.
I,
Um,
I I mean I love it. It's good in its own right, but I think that because it doesn't have it's not diverse. It doesn't have as expansive of the world. It's like you're still in the same
yeah,
jail over and over
it's
and over
very
again.
limited. I'll give you that in that way,
Yeah.
but it's still fantastic. Okay, two more things left. So, other than your own, a favorite podcast that's not yours.
Let's see. That's a hard one because I actually don't get a lot of time to listen to others because I'm working so long
You're
on
too
my
busy on
own.
yours.
And then also I get a lot of ear fatigue from listening. Like the longer you edit, the more that you just need a time to recover.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think if there's any one in particular that just stands out. That Wolf 357 or three is
Or
it
Wolf 359.
359? I always get the number wrong. It's my weird brain always gets those numbers wrong. That's a very good one. Trying to think. Trying.
You don't have to. I just because I expect people from who do fixed podcasts must now know how to. They're forced to know each other now because of the networks that they're in.
Oh yeah, no, I've listened to a whole bunch of them, and the problem is that I haven't listened to a lot. I've got to listen to like one of every one, but I haven't been able to do a lot over an extended period of time just because of time constraints. Like
Yeah,
literally, if I'm spending an hour listening to yours, that's an hour that I'm not working on mine.
and last one, just because I expect people ask you this a lot. Favorite zombie movie?
I'm gonna have to go with Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I thought that it was like because he made them fast, which I was like, cool, made him more of a threat.
Mm,
Got into really good stuff with the character dynamics of what was happening there. Had a realism, grittiness to it that I thought was not there before. But then I'm also gonna split it with Shaun of the Dead
that is
because
fair enough.
I love the comedy for it. I love the characters. I love the punchiness to it. Like the fast cuts, the moving around, the ultimately the subtle spots of jokes. Where it's like, and he turns off the radio in the car after he's been turned. It's like there's nothing left of him in there, and it's all beep. It's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe there's a little bit left.
No. I mean, because yeah, mine will always be Shaun of the Dead's level top out there, but also 28 Days Later, just because that
Oh
is sort
yeah.
of the one credits like bringing the zombies back and fast zombies essentially. Uh,
Yeah, and that one has a lot of the gritty realism. I haven't seen the newest one. I will see it eventually, but like I said, I have to kind of cut myself off.
That's fine. You got time for that. Well then, sir, KC Wayland, that is the end of today's show. But please do plug yourself. When's the next episode of We're Alive Descendants coming out?
It's Tuesday. It's a doozy. The
Chapter 19. What's the name of it again?
Dwelling in the Past,
Dwelling in
and
the Past.
yeah.
Fantastic. And for anyone out there, where can they listen to We're Alive? Any of the shows, where can they listen to them?
They can go to we'realive.com. That's without the apostrophe to get all the stuff. Or if they want to see our other shows, it's waylandproductions.com because we've done a lot of other shows as well.
Great. And well, thank you guys so much for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed this. Please go listen to We're Alive and all the other shows, Lockdown, Gold Rush, Scouts on the Descendants, because it's a fantastic show to listen to. Thanks so much for listening, guys. This will be put on YouTube for anyone watching this right now. But thanks so much for listening. I'll see you guys next time. Brand new episode, brand new everything. So till then, guys, bye.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Sorry, I mentioned just saying you did Angel Dead. It's been on my mind the entire time listening to the show because I've listened to it for ages, but I was just thinking like, oh man, you didn't put him in command, you made him a member, you kill him off, you didn't even get right. It's just like, oh man, you did him so dirty that entire time.
There were two paths that he could have taken as a character, and the one path was the only way to go for him at that point. Just because I needed a couple things to happen in the right way. He could have taken the leadership role and gone up in that capacity and stepped up at the end. But it was the other route was worked out better.
Mm. That would have been interesting. Not that I would have preferred it, but that would have been interesting. Like if Michael died and somehow Angel had to take up the reins, that would have been a very interesting like
It
plot
wouldn't have been.
twist.
It wouldn't have been as good. I liked the thing about Michael is while he's not as connected with the people, he's got a little bit of like that. He's definitely on the spectrum, and he's definitely not the most understanding people person, but he always tried his best.
Yeah, I'll get. Yeah, that's the thing I was because I mean that's the thing I like with not just with Michael but also with CJ is that
Hmm.
both of them are leaders, but they're not likable leaders. They're two people who are just like, ugh, I don't like you, but I guess I kind of have to follow you because you're the ones that know everything. You know?
Yeah, and that's the thing about leaders is like literally, and I've had to lead people before. Good leaders almost can't be universally liked. They can't. You have to make decisions that somebody's not going to like. And there's another line coming up, I think, very soon in the next episode. It's like sometimes you have to do things for the people you love that they'll never understand.